in the news, we've seen that Pope Francis has appointed the Most Reverend the Most Reverend Richard G. Henning as the coadjutor Bishop of Providence. So coadjutor was a new term for me. I had to look that up. A coadjutor is a bishop appointed to assist a diocesan bishop and often also designated as his successor.
He is. That's what a coadjutor is, successor to the ordinary.
Right. And so one of the things that I think is a surprise for most people is that bishops have to retire, or they have to submit their retirement when they turn 75.
Yes, under canon law in the Roman Catholic Church, it's 75. The Pope does not have to accept that resignation, that retirement. He can ask the bishop to stay on for X amount of time, and I'm not sure how the agreement works between the Pope and the local ordinary, how long that would take, but it doesn't necessarily mean the person has to leave office. They're required to. In contrast, in the Episcopal Church, it's 70. You must retire as a bishop in the Episcopal Church at 70 years old. You continue to function as a bishop in the House of Bishops, but you have retired status, and then you can work for other bishops at their request and so forth. So the former Episcopal Bishop of Rhode Island, Gerald Wolfe, is an assistant to the Bishop of Long Island right now and has been for like a decade and so forth. Bishop Jelena, who is the bishop in the 70s and into the 90s in Rhode Island, is still alive, and he's close to 100 years old, I think, but he's continued to do ministry to his capacity since his retirement more than 15 years ago.
Right. So I think before we get into Bishop Tobin and his eventual replacement, I want to take a step back and look again at, okay, why should we care? You and I, we're both Anglicans, and then as far as who may be listening to this podcast, we are hoping that people from all different denominational backgrounds will be listening, whether it's Eastern Orthodox or Roman Catholic or Anglican or Evangelical or Protestant. So I think when the topic of Catholic bishops come up, people may be tempted just to tune it out or to not give it much of a second thought. But why, I think there's two questions here. Why would a Roman Catholic, care about the replacement of a bishop? Because I think plenty of people don't know who their bishop is. And then the second is, why should non-Catholics care about who the bishop is in their local area?
Well, those are really important questions, especially in the context in which we live in contemporary society. In Rhode Island's history, especially in the last 100 years, and other than the governor and maybe for the average citizen who maybe not both U.S. senators, but at least one of the U.S. senators, most people would know who they were. So when I was growing up, everybody knew who John Chafee was. He was a senator, right? And Claiborne Pell. They might not know who the United States House of Representatives members were. But other than the governor, the Catholic bishop was the second most, or maybe even the most identifiable person in the state. And it had to do because Rhode Island was the most Catholic state in the United States. And other than a politician, the governor, and other high-ranking politicians at state and federal level, pronouncements of a Catholic bishop would have been more readily available. And the media was much more streamlined, obviously. The Providence Journal Bulletin was the disseminator of most all information to Rhode Islanders from the state level for decade after decade after decade. So Catholic bishops had tremendous influence over the state, over its cultural milieu, over its moral precepts. 40 years ago, what a Catholic bishop thought would have heavily influenced the Rhode Island General Assembly And those things have all waned in incremental measurements since the mid-'60s. Today, I would agree that, I don't know what the percentages are, but lots of Roman Catholics wouldn't know who the bishop was and probably it doesn't register and affect their life one iota.
Right.
Kind of a secondary conversation. There's always been two bishops in Rhode Island. It used to be a magazine that used to come out with the Providence Journal in the 70s and 80s called the Rhode Islander. It used to be tucked into it. And I remember it had an article on Bishop George Hunt, the Episcopal Bishop of Rhode Island. This would have been in the mid-'80s or so. And it was called The Other Rhode Island Bishop.
Huh.
And just to give a contrast, at the height of the Episcopal Diocese size, it had about 35,000 members in like 70 parishes and missions. And it was the second largest denomination in Rhode Island to the Roman Catholic Church, which had 650,000 baptized members. So that's how massive the dichotomy was, right? And then all the other Protestant groups, the American Baptists and the United Church of Christ, all went in descending order in smaller size than the Episcopal diocese. So that's how dominant the culture was and why the Catholic bishop was and has been such a prominent figure in Rhode Island culture.